Hello and welcome to Dining with Death. This episode is on my playlist, Dining with the Deceased, where we visit locations that are supposedly haunted. Today I'm coming to you from the state park called Dead Horse Point, where people claim to have seen not only ghosts of people, but ghosts of horses. I'm going to take you on a little tour of the area. We're going to talk a little bit about the story that gave the park its name, and then of course we're going to eat here because this is Dining with Death. I'm Stacey Lee. Let's begin. There are certain places on Earth that are so breathtaking, so magnificent, and so grand that describing them with words will never do them justice. You simply cannot fully explain with any words what this looks like to someone else. We're fortunate to have YouTube and film and television to take us places we will most likely never get to see in person during our lifetimes. When I travel to the places I share with you, I really try and give you a point of view experience. I want to take you along with me. I want you to feel as though you have been there. Today, I am taking you to a place that no matter who you are, no matter how different you and I might be, we could stand together in silence and just stare with wonder and awe at the majesty of this earth we live on. On the eastern edge of the Utah-Colorado border sits Dead Horse Point. Millions of years of geologic activity have worn away, inch by inch, the red soil and formed this deep canyon with spectacular views from above. Sediment has been deposited over eons. Ancient oceans once flowed here. There have been freshwater lakes and streams long before man ever made an appearance on this rock. It never ceases to amaze me what wind can do. Over time, wind can create or destroy in the most incredible ways, and you can see its great power here in this beautiful location. Volcanoes form the high mountains that rise above like islands in the desert. This is the result of 10 million years of erosion, sculpting and eroding this land's mesas and buttes and canyons. The Colorado River flowing through the region has carved this earth, demanding that it move so the water can find the sea. This area only gets 10 inches of rain per year. Compare that to Seattle, which gets almost 40 inches, or 43 in Boston, the 60 inches that Miami gets annually, and you realize just how little precipitation that is. But as we know, life finds a way. The wildlife and the vegetation here have adapted over eons of time to live in this harsh climate where it can get well over 100 degrees in the summer and only 20 degrees in the winter. The plants here have actually evolved over time to minimize water loss and to retain every tiny drop their roots absorb. There are plants in this area that will actually hibernate. They go dormant during droughts and then come back to life when there is adequate water for them. Nature is awe-inspiring, and its power is never more fully on display than in a place like this. There are animals here who have adapted to going long periods of time without hydration, and others that evolve the ability to travel miles to find it. This is a delicate ecosystem that, despite all of the things that could possibly happen to destroy it, continues to thrive. When the skies turn dark and the rains come down here, it is something to behold. Thunder and lightning have an entirely different feel to them here, and it is no wonder that early people believed that desert storms meant the gods were angry. Many people believe, not surprisingly so, that this is part of the Grand Canyon. There are obvious similarities, and both places are spectacular, but this is, in fact, an entirely different place from the Grand Canyon. It's about a 5.5-hour drive from Dead Horse Point to the south rim of the Grand Canyon and about 7 hours to the north rim. The high desert woodlands and vast canyon landscape is reminiscent of the Grand Canyon, but yes, they are different places. When the sun goes down, the dark night skies fill with thousands of stars, and you can imagine sitting under that blanket of light from a place like this, you are reminded of just how immense the universe is and how small you are in comparison. Sunrises and sunsets are breathtaking. As the sun moves across the sky, the canyon walls are bathed in white and yellow and gold, and then in pink and blue, and with each subtle change, the canyon looks different. This is a place you will visit and you will remember for the rest of your life. This is a place to make memories with those you love. We brought our oldest little one, and let me tell you, the anxiety I had, it was through the roof. There are no guardrails in many places. There are no safety barriers. It's just you and the cliff and the earth that lays below. And even though Papa had a death grip on this little one, I thought I was going to have a heart attack simply from the sight of them anywhere near the edge. Even in the places where there are guardrails and rock fences, it still feels dangerous because it is dangerous. But the photos say it all. It's just a spectacular place. It's magical. There is nowhere like it on Earth. The lands around Dead Horse Point State Park, Arches National Park, and Moab, Utah once belonged to members of the Pueblo of Zuni, the Hopi tribe, the Southern Ute Indian tribe, the Ute Indian tribe Uinta and Ouray, the Paiute Indian tribe of Utah, and the Kaibab Band of Paiute Indians. There is archaeological evidence dating back 10,000 years proving that ancestral Pueblans, also called Anasazi, had farming communities here dating back around the 11th and 12th centuries. There is also evidence that, for unknown reasons, those tribes abandoned this area in the 13th century for many decades, and then nomadic Ute tribes began to pass through here. The Utes were, in fact, the first to greet early Europeans that came to this area. In 1855, Mormon pioneers tried to settle this area. The Mormon Church had established what is called the Elk Mountain Mission, and it was intent on sending settlers and missionaries to take the land and to convert the Native Americans to Christianity. Well, the Utes were not about to let that happen. The Elk Mountain Mission lasted only 3 months and was then closed down because the settlers could not withstand the attacks from that Ute tribe who was defending what had always been theirs. For the next 3 decades, the entire area of Moab sat somewhat unclaimed. It was used by trappers and prospectors and cattlemen, but they knew better than to get too comfortable here. Eventually, in the late 1870s, a permanent modern-day settlement was established. Those first settlers came into Spanish Valley in about 1877. They were Mormons coming from the north, intent on going a bit further south. But when they encountered the massive walls of the canyons, they had to make some changes. They unloaded their wagons and then took them completely apart, lowering them piece by piece with rope to the bottom of the canyon. They then drove their oxen hard up over the steep canyon rim and down steep slides of sand and into the base of the canyon. After days of this, they had to find a spot that was free of quicksand and sturdy enough to provide a crossing over the river. They found a small spot that was shallow enough to let them cross, and soon they were on the other side. After settling, they built a ferry that allowed passage on the river until a bridge was built in 1911. Moab was the first larger village in the area and was very much a Wild West town. Whenever I research these episodes, I'm always surprised that the Westerns, the old cowboy movies, they talk about Dodge City and Tombstone, but they leave out places like Moab and Pioche, Nevada. Those towns had murder rates higher than Dodge City and Tombstone. They were rough places to live, and the roughest outlaws of the time were drawn here to the Moab area because there were so many places to hide out. Moab was a favorite place of Butch Cassidy and the Wild Bunch, but they were far from the only outlaws in the area. To this day, there is a spirit of individuality and adventure in Moab. The years may have passed on the calendar, but some things have never changed. We went to the little visitor center towards the entrance of the park. I have a soft spot in my heart for these places. Here in the West, they're all very similar. There are trinkets to purchase, jewelry, t-shirts, always some snacks, and then there is usually an area that's most of the time empty, never a lot of people around, that has either a little movie to watch, some taxidermy, usually a topographical map, and some framed photos. Sometimes there are paintings that have been donated. There are almost always glass display cases with treasures of bygone eras, saddles, ropes, blankets, things that remind you of the people who were here but have been gone for longer than you've been alive. A lot of care and effort is taken to produce these little mini museums, and if you visit, make sure to check them out. They're charming and kind of old-fashioned, and I just personally love them. Our little ones can talk Papa into just about anything they want. His wallet is always a lot lighter when we leave anywhere there is to buy treats or toys. And our little princess today, the only one old enough to do a road trip yet, was so happy with her little treasures. I love making memories with these girls, and this is a perfect place for a family vacation. We walked the trails high above the canyon floor with only a rock fence a foot wide between us and certain death. We stood on the lookout points and listened to the birds and felt the air on our skin, and it was a good day to be alive. I love these places because they remind me that life is simply a miracle and that I need to stop and remember that more often. The settlers who came to this ancient land very quickly began to understand why its original inhabitants believed in spirits and ghosts. It doesn't take much to envision someone looking down on you from above, or to imagine how quickly they could be right on top of you if you were at the bottom. The wind whistles through the immovable rock walls, and the night sky is very black, and it can be a little scary out here at times, even in the daytime. But why is this place called Dead Horse Point? Legend goes that atop this gooseneck bend in the Colorado River, a group of early 19th century cowboys rounded up a group of wild mustangs that roamed this mesa. Other versions of this story say it was Native American tribes that were under attack that drove their horses to the top of the mesa for safety. The legend goes that most likely the cowboys were successful in gathering a herd of horses, driving them down the neck of the peninsula onto the round area of the mesa top. They then built a corral of sorts, trapping the horses above the sheer cliff walls. For reasons no one knows, the herd of horses was forgotten. After days without food or water and with nowhere to go, the horses began to die. When people finally returned to the area, they were shocked to see what had been done and could not imagine why the horses were left trapped like that. It seems that this terrible and inhumane act has left a lasting effect on this spectacular area. There are stories of campers and hikers who hear horses whinnying, who hear the sound of hooves in the water, and who see horses in front of them one moment that disappear the next. It is especially common to hear hooves on the rocks after the sun goes down. Many people have reported hearing what sounds like horses in distress high above them, their calls echoing through the canyon. Campers and Native Americans alike claim they have seen skinwalkers in this area, shape-shifting witches or warlocks that can take human form or animal form and that can transform right before your eyes. Legend has it that skinwalkers can take the shape of a very large wolf, and some are said to have glowing red eyes. They move quickly in an unearthly fashion and can materialize and vanish in the blink of an eye. Hikers and campers have reported hearing voices high up on the cliffs when no one is present, and there are several accounts of sounds you might hear if you were on a wagon train, the creaking and moaning of wood wheels on the rock floor. There is a Navajo word for these spirits that I will not try to pronounce, but it means, "With it, he goes on all fours." When you stand here, it is not hard to imagine why so many people believe in those things. There is something sacred about these places. There is something different, something special. What's different, what's special about them depends largely on your perspective, on who you ask. But I don't think you'd get any argument that they have a very distinctive feel to them. When I'm in a place like this, I know that I have never felt similarly in a city or a town. I love a city, but the energy is different there. Here it is peaceful and calm, but also foreboding, not in a negative way, but in the way that you realize you are somewhere dangerous. You know you are standing in a place where taking just a few steps too many will send you sailing hundreds of feet to the bottom. You know you are standing in a place that would kill you very quickly were you to find yourself alone here for very long. You know you are standing on ground that people consider sacred and they consider home, and that energy lives on in these places, even though the ancient people who first called them home are long gone. And here at Dead Horse Point, according to legend, you're standing where, long ago, some people did a very bad thing and maybe, just maybe, the echoes of those kinds of bad things live on forever. Now, as we always do on this playlist, Dining with the Deceased, we have a meal in our haunted location. This is Dining with Death. We stayed in Moab during our visit, and we decided to eat at this charming little spot that is a favorite with locals and sits very prominently on Main Street. It's called the Jailhouse Cafe because, yes, it is part of the old jailhouse here in Moab. This little structure was first built as a private residence around 1885 and was then sold to the county in 1892 and functioned as the courthouse for the next decade. Because it was the courthouse, there were 2 thick adobe walls constructed inside to house prisoners who were scheduled to go to trial. It was really the only jail here for many years. At the Jailhouse Cafe, they make most things in-house, and the breakfast is very popular. They even have their own house blend of coffee. As you can see, it's very tiny and very crowded. It's so popular that they've had to add this little addition off to the side. And in between the 2 buildings, there's an outdoor stand to buy t-shirts and stickers and keychains. You know, we had to get us a couple of t-shirts to commemorate our trip. Jason had a classic American breakfast, and our little one had pancakes, and then we got a side of this incredible thick-cut bacon that is made especially for this spot. I had the Swedish pancakes with house-made lingonberry jam, and they were delicious, thin and fluffy and tender and just everything you want in a breakfast delicacy. As we walked outside and down the street, I couldn't help but wonder what the people who built this tiny little house almost 150 years ago would think of so many people having breakfast in their living room. What would they think of this little town they once knew as so isolated, as being one of the most popular tourist destinations in the Southwest, just springing up around what was once red sand and tumbleweeds? I thought about all of that, and I couldn't help but think about what this place will look like 150 years from now. I can't even imagine, and I'm sorry I won't be here to see it. Thank you for joining me today on Dining with Death, Dining with the Deceased. Like the video if you liked the video, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me. It helps a lot. Stay safe and be kind to each other, and I'll see you next time on Dining with Death. Bye.